I've been thinking about the design for the form for the concrete garden box panels I've been casting. I want the forms to be easier and faster to build, especially for those with little or no woodworking experience or tools. And I also want the casting process to be easier. And I think I got it with this new version of the forms. The concrete garden panel forms I'll be making today are about as simple as I can design them. They still create a great panel that is long-lasting and rot-proof for your raised garden beds, and they still link together and can be arranged in a number of shapes and sizes. And these can also be stacked to make taller beds. You won't need a lot of tools to make these new simplified forms, only a few hand tools and a drill. I'm taking things right down to the basics here to show you the bare minimum you need to build the forms and cast the concrete panels. You won't need a table saw or a drill press or any other power tools. I have a new set of plans and have them available for download on my website. These plans will also have a more detailed list of materials and step-by-step instructions. This will be a detailed tutorial, so if you're an experienced woodworker, then maybe this video is not for you. But I'll be trying some new ideas here that can also be applied to the other forms I've designed. So here's how these new simplified forms go together. The base is made from a 2x10 and acts as the bottom of the form and the support for the 1x4 walls. Each end is assembled from 3 pieces, with the middle piece having a hole to support a pipe. The sides have a hole for the other end of the pipe. The pipe is PVC plastic and is used to form a hole in the concrete casting. Once hardened, the pipes are slid out of the casting through the side walls. The form is turned over and the casting removed. If you're at all intimidated by woodworking, don't worry. I'm going to go through everything you need to do here. The lumber for these simplified forms are all standard sizes and can be bought at any big box hardware store or lumber yard. Look for boards that are straight and flat, without a twist or any cracks, and few, if any, knots. Try to select the best ones you can find, even if you have to sort through a pile. Good lumber will make everything easier, so it's worth it to be fussy here. I'll look at the condition of the end of the 2x10 and 1x4. I want to avoid any cracks. I also want to check the width of the board. It should be 9 1/4 inches. And I'll check if the ends are cut square. If so, then I'll take advantage of that for one end of the base. The end of this 2x10 was not square, so I flipped it around. The other end looked good, so I'll start there. I'll make a point 4 5/8 inch from one side. This marks the center line of the board. With my square on the end, I'll draw a line in a couple of inches. I'll try to indicate metric equivalents where possible. The plans have dimensions in both inches and millimeters. I'll make another mark 2 inches in from the corner and draw a line with the square. This is the corner I'll be removing. I also trace these lines around each edge to the other side. This will help me check that I'm sawing straight and square. To make the base, I'll be using 2 hand saws, a regular saw and a finer tooth stiff back miter saw, a pencil or a pen, a measuring tape, and a 12-inch combination square. From an 8-foot 2x10, 2 8-foot 1x4s, and a 4-foot length of 3/8 pipe, you can build 2 36-inch forms. I support the board over sawhorses. You could use some chairs for this as well. I use the fine miter saw to make the first cut 2 inches in from the end of the board. Partway through these cuts, you can stop and turn the board over to see how you're doing, and to make some adjustments as you go. I'll start the other cut with my miter saw. It has a stiffer blade and it's easier to get off to a good start with. The 36-inch panel, I believe, is the most versatile size for a garden bed, so that's the size I'll be making today, but you can make the panels any length you like. I'll highlight the dimensions of the plans you would need to change. With the larger handsaw, I finished the cut to remove this corner. I checked these cuts with my square and they looked okay. Next, I'll measure 36 inches from the end and mark around the board with pen and square. I marked this side of the board as the bottom. Then cut the board along this line. Then mark the cutout on the opposite corner. And as before, make these 2 cuts. I checked these cuts with the square and used some medium grit sandpaper wrapped around a block of wood to fix any cuts that were not so straight or square. Don't over worry much, just try to follow your lines as best you can. Alright, now that we have the base done, we're going to cut the side walls from an 8-foot 1x4. And here's what we need to do that. A miter box and a miter saw, a drill, and if you have one, a driver, but a drill is probably all you need. Phillips screwdriver, 3 drill bits, 1/2 inch, 3/16, 1/8 inch, some wood glue, a bit of medium to coarse sandpaper, 2 sizes of screws. We've got drywall screws, 6 1/5, and a 7 1/2 of a pocket or cabinet screws, flat head. We're going to use a tape measure, a square, a drill block, pen or pencil, and a scrap piece of wood. All right, so from the plans, we're going to make all the cuts for the side walls and for the end assembly pieces. So we'll need 2 of each. And what I want to do is, with my miter saw screwed to the workbench, I'll check the end of this 1x4 to see if it is square. If it's square, then I can use that end. So I'll mark the first cuts. Both the side walls are 35.5 inches. And I'm going to mark and cut one at a time. So this particular miter box has these little pegs here to help hold the workpiece while I'm cutting, which is kind of handy. I know it's a little bit of a flimsy box, but for this type of project it'll do just fine. So I marked my line, 35.5 inches, and I want to cut on the right side of that line. Alright, so let's have a look at the cut. Not bad. And then what I've been doing is just take a little bit of sandpaper. You can have that on a sanding block if that works for you. Okay. That's the first sidewall. And then we'll take another 35.5 inches, and then we'll have our sidewalls for our first form. Then it's a matter of taking what's left from the 1x4 and cutting the parts for making up the end assembly. So there'll be 6 parts altogether. Okay. That's the first part E. Okay. And one more of those. All right, last one to cut is part C. And then I've got a knot right here on this one. Let's see if the end of this is actually square. So I've got a square end, so maybe I will see if I can eliminate that from that last one. All right. Okay. And that's what's left over. All right, so now we're going to drill the holes for the dowels in parts D and in the end walls. So the first thing to do is lay those out with the measurements. So we know that we're coming down 1 inch. Right, and then on the D parts, 1 3/4 in. And on the side walls, I have to look at my drawings, also 1 3/4 from the other end. Right. All right, so this is going to be a 1/2 inch hole. Got a 1/2 inch bit, twist drill bit in my drill, and the little drill block that I have by Milescraft. This is really handy. This is basically replacing a drill press for us, and it has holes going from 1/2 inch down to 1/8 inch, which is perfect for us. And also it has these small alignment grooves that'll help us position our drill block exactly where we need it to drill exactly in the center of that hole. So I don't drill into my workbench. I've got a scrap piece of lumber for this. So I just kind of sight down that and basically just hold it in place and go nice and easy. Just see if we got it started where we need it to be. I'll just take that out of the way for the last little bit. There we go. Not bad. Okay, I'll go a little bit slower on this one. Almost done. There we go. Okay, so that's the two D parts. Now I'm going to lay out the locations to put in the pilot holes to make up the end wall assembly, as well as where they will attach to the base. So let's start with part D. And I know that D, I'm going to come in 3/8 of an inch down the side and 3/4 of an inch from the top and the bottom. So I can set this ahead of time to my 3/8 mark. And then I can use this scrap piece here as a 3/4 inch marker for parts D here. So I know I'm going to be coming down on D 3/4 of an inch and 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. And then D is going to attach on this side 3/8 in. I should have taken this all the way over here. And 3/8 in and 3/8 in. So here I have the spots marked for the pilot holes because D is going to go together with part C and E, like to make an end wall assembly like this. So I'm going to need to drill pilot holes to go through this direction, as well as pilot holes for screws that are coming in this direction here. So it's a matter of just laying out those holes, and with the 1/8 bit, just drill in the pilot holes. Now the drill block also has a 1/8 inch guide here, but I think for this size of hole and what it's doing here, just freehanding these would be fine. So that's going to put the screw right in the center of the other piece. All right, so that's D. And then with, let's say, part E, when I look at that one, I only have one that I need to worry about, and it's the screw that's going to hold it through the bottom wall into a piece like this, which would be the base. And that one is 3/4 inch up from the bottom and somewhere in the center. Right, so that would be the pilot hole for E. Now I'll do the pilot holes for the side walls. And 3/8 in from the sides. Okay. And we'll do the same with the other sidewall. So here's where we're going to assemble the end wall pieces together. And we're going to use some 6 1/5/8 drywall screws. Put them together with, and a little bit of wood glue. If you've got some exterior wood glue, that would probably be preferable, but I think any wood glue would probably be fine. So we're going to use our miter box to help hold some of the pieces together. What I like to do is to just visualize how it's going to go. So I've got my part E here, part D there, and then I've got my part C like that. And then what I like to do is where D and E meet, I'm going to put 2 double lines like that. And then where part C and D meet, I'm just going to put a single line across that. So when I'm moving pieces around to put it together, then it's easy for me to figure out, okay, which piece was from where, right? So then I know that these two were meant to go together like this. So what I do is I'm going to hold those pieces, and I'm going to use the miter box to help hold it square. Use my 1/8 bit and just go slightly in to part, what is it, part E. So you see just 2 little starter holes there. Then I can apply a little bit of wood glue. Like that. Again, use these alignment marks to help me remember which way it went. Take a couple of these little drywall screws and just start them in the pilot holes from part D. Now I'm just going to snug those, and then I'm going to check with my fingers to see how this is aligned. It looks pretty good. So then I'm just going to snug them a little bit tighter by hand. Just like that, just so they're flush with the surface. Okay. And then part C is going to go like that. So again, to just hold it in place. Through the pilot holes into part C. And then a little bit of wood glue. Set them back in place. Start the screws. Check for alignment here. Got a little extra glue on that. No problem. And then finish tightening by hand. I like to do it by hand so then I can kind of get a feel if I'm starting to split any of the wood. All right. And that's one of the end assemblies put together. And we'll do the same with the other one. Okay, all the main components are made. Now it's time to test fit and assemble the form for the first time. So we're going to start with the ends. set them in place. Basically, you want to see how they fit. And we want to make sure it doesn't extend anywhere past here. And it makes sure that it fits nicely in the corners as well. And then we're going to run screws in through these two sections right there. So we can do that now. Looks like that's going to fit okay. And I'm going to use some pocket hole or flathead cabinet screws here. These are 1.5 inches. They're number 7. So we can just start those. All right. Now we'll go down to the other end and put the other end on. Okay, we can test fit this other end. See how it fits in the corner. Not too bad. I think that's going to work. Yeah. It's not the best fit, but there's a little gap here, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. All right. Doesn't extend past here. This board must be slightly more than 9 1/4. Yeah, it's a 1/16 wider. So we've got a little bit, we're going to have a little bit of gap when this comes together in this corner, but that's no problem. Okay. I'll run this one in first. Has ends in place. I messed up these a little bit. I put D the wrong way around on both of these ends. So the glue wasn't completely set up, so I just pulled the screws out, flipped this around, and put it back together. Now the holes line up properly. I wasn't paying attention. All right, so now let's just attach the side walls. We're going to line this edge up to here. I'm going to run in just one screw right now to hold this in place. Okay, now I'll drill some pilots into these ends. And we'll run some screws in here. All right. And do the same on this side, starting at this edge here, because I want these to line up. Run in. Drill. Okay. That's the form. Now, the dowels. We want to see if they can, how well they line up here. Sometimes they're a little bit tight and we need to open up this hole a little bit with the 1/2-inch bit. So we'll just make it a little bit bigger and then we'll see how this fits. All right. This lines up pretty well, but it's a little bit snug. So I'm going to do the same. Just slightly. There we go. That form's done. Last thing to do is to label the parts so we can assemble it exactly the same again. This one's going to be B. And B. Now that we know that it fits well together, we have all the parts labeled. Looks like the holes are aligned properly. Now we'll take it apart and coat it with mineral oil. Hang on, there's another part to this video and it's coming right up.